Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, if you're a React Native developer, you know the pain, right? Boilerplate code, endless context switching, and just hunting down those super obscure bugs. But what if I told you AI is about to change, well, pretty much all of that? Today, we're going to dive deep into the AI tools that are absolutely redefining mobile development for 2025. We're talking coding faster, smarter, and finally getting to focus on the stuff that actually matters.
So, here's the plan. We'll start with the huge productivity boom that's happening right now. Then, we'll break down the 3 tiers of tooling out there. After that, we'll put a spotlight on the key tools you need to know about. We'll even cover how to customize your AI assistant, how to choose the right copilot for you, and we'll wrap up with a look at the future of development. Let's get into it.
All right, Section 1, the AI productivity boom. Look, to really understand why this is such a massive deal, you gotta see the numbers. The gains developers are reporting are, well, they're pretty incredible.
So check this out. We're seeing a 25 to 45% jump in productivity. Now, what does that actually feel like? Well, it means you're basically slashing the time you waste writing the same repetitive stuff over and over. You know, all that component setup, the state management hooks, the navigation stacks. Imagine automating a huge chunk of that. That's what we're talking about. It frees you up to tackle the real problems.
And all that speed, it has a huge impact. Teams are delivering features 30% faster. And let's be clear, that is not a small number. That's the difference between shipping a new feature in weeks instead of months. It means getting your product to market way faster and, actually staying ahead of the curve.
But it's not just about going faster, it's also about getting better. Code review efficiency is up by a massive 40%. Think about it, the AI is like this perfect code reviewer that never gets tired. It catches common mistakes, it spots those tricky anti-patterns, and it enforces your team's standards automatically. That means way less back and forth between developers and a much, much smoother process.
Okay, so these numbers are real. They show a huge shift in how we build software. So the big question is, how can you get these same results? How do you actually tap into this power? Well, let's break it down.
Let's move on to the 3 tiers of AI tooling. I find it really helpful to think about the whole landscape in these 3 distinct categories.
So first up, Tier 1, the AI pair programmer. You're probably familiar with this one. Think GitHub Copilot living right there inside your editor like VS Code. It's way more than just autocomplete though. It's giving you super smart suggestions, you can chat with it, and it helps you with those smaller refactoring jobs while you're coding.
Okay, next up we've got the AI-first IDEs. Now, tools like Cursor and Windsurf, these aren't just plugins. They are entire development environments built from the ground up around AI. And because of that, they can do much more complex stuff, like operations that span across multiple files, because they get the full context of your entire project. And finally, there's a third approach, which is really powerful. This is where you take a standard editor, say VS Code, and you deeply customize an AI assistant. You do this by feeding it custom instructions for your specific repository. You're teaching the AI your project's unique rules and coding style.
All right, now for the fun part. A spotlight on the key tools. Let's zoom in on the big players in these categories and see what they can really do for a React Native project. First up, of course, is the heavyweight champion of pair programming, GitHub Copilot. Look, this is so much more than fancy autocomplete now. The chat is so deeply baked into VS Code, it feels like a native part of the editor. And its new agent capabilities mean it can analyze your whole workspace to give you suggestions that perfectly match your project style.
And here's where things get wild. With a command like @workspace, you're not just asking it to complete a line of code. You're giving it a high-level command to refactor an entire feature across, maybe dozens of files. Think about this task, swapping out your auth flow to use Keychain for secure storage. That could take a developer hours of super careful work. Here, you're kicking it off with just one sentence. It's incredible.
Now let's talk about Cursor. It takes a totally different approach because it's a full-blown AI-first IDE. It's really built for those bigger, meatier tasks. It has special things like a composer mode for building out features across multiple files and these agent workflows that can just go off and do complex jobs on their own, like migrating a library or writing a whole test suite for you.
Here's a perfect example. Migrating from something like async backend to a faster solution like MMKV, any React Native dev knows that's a tricky job. It's super easy to mess up. With Cursor, you can literally just delegate that entire task to an agent. It'll figure out the plan, it'll analyze all the files, and it will just do the migration for you. And then we have Windsurf, which comes from the folks at Codium. Its really big standout feature is something they call Cascade technology. The best way to think about it is that it lets the AI chain together a bunch of smaller steps to finish one big complex request. And the whole time, it understands your project's dependencies and overall architecture.
So you could give it a prompt like this, a whole feature request in one sentence. Windsurf would then cascade through all the steps. It would generate the UI, it would hook up the image picker, it would set up form validation, maybe with Formic and Yup, it would write the API calls, and it might even spin up some basic tests for the whole thing. It's like delegating an entire feature ticket.
So this stuff is all super powerful, right? But the real magic, the absolute game changer, is when the AI starts writing code that feels like it came from a senior dev on your team. The question is, how do you get it to do that?
The secret sauce is custom instructions. And with GitHub Copilot, it's actually super easy. You just create a .github folder in your project, and inside that, you make a file called copilot-instructions.md. Seriously, that's it. This markdown file basically becomes the AI's brain for your project. It's the style guide, the rulebook, and it will follow it for every single suggestion.
And you can get really, really specific. Look at this one instruction. It enforces a huge performance best practice in React Native. Just by telling the AI to always use stylesheet.create and never use inline styles, you guarantee that every piece of code it generates is optimized and consistent with your team standards from day one.
Okay, so we've covered the different types of tools and how to customize them. Now for the big question. How do you choose your Copilot? Which one is the right fit for you and your team?
So let's break down how they compare. Looking at this, you can see GitHub Copilot is just king when it comes to deep customization inside an editor you already use, like VS Code. So if you love your current setup and just want to supercharge it, Copilot's probably your best bet. But if you find yourself constantly making big, complex changes across many files, or you really want those powerful autonomous agents, then the AI-first IDEs like Cursor and Windsurf, they've got a definite advantage there. It really just depends on your workflow.
All right, let's wrap this up by looking ahead at the future of development. Because really, this is about more than just coding a bit faster. This is a fundamental change in what it even means to be a developer.
At the end of the day, these tools aren't here to replace us. They're here to augment us. They take care of all the boring, repetitive grunt work which lets us operate at a much higher level. We get to focus our brains on the big stuff like architecture, user experience, and real innovation. So the only question left to ask is, with the AI handling all the boilerplate, what are the truly complex problems that you're going to solve?